Italian history actually started 28,000 years ago. From ancient art to contemporary design, Raphael and Michelangelo to Barolo wines and the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Italy's beauty is easy to experience and almost impossible to define. Given what Italy has to offer, the intention of our presentation is to guide our viewer through cities and countrysides, embellished by man, to historical sites and a wealth of artistic treasures rivaled by no other country. Italy is a country for all seasons, cherished by both the first-time visitor and the seasoned traveler. In fact, it is such a popular destination that one never knows when it might be safe to travel without reservations. Rome, the eternal city. 3,000 years of history are inscribed on the banks of the Tiber River and around the famous Seven Hills. The Colosseum is the largest amphitheater ever built in Rome. The Emperor Vespasian began construction in 70 AD. In 80 AD, completed by Titus, it was inaugurated with imposing spectacles and games, which lasted 100 days. In the interior, the tiers could hold some 50,000 people. The greatest gladiatorial shows were held in the amphitheater. They were the favorite entertainment of the Romans. The interior today exposes the underground passages where animal cages and machinery would have been kept. So emblematic of Rome, it's said that when the Colosseum falls, so shall Rome. The realization of the monument to Vittorio Emanuele II was entrusted to Giuseppe Zarcone and was begun in 1885 to be finished and inaugurated in 1911. The altar to the homeland was envisioned as the greatest architecture, with the solemn statue of Rome keeping watch over the tomb of the unknown soldier. Without a doubt, the Trevi Fountain is the most famous fountain in Rome. The theatrical composition and imposing beauty of the sculptured marbled figures make it a true masterpiece, both of sculpture and architecture. It was built for Pope Clement XII in the middle of the 18th century by the architect Nicola Salvi. The imposing figure of Neptune, who firmly guides a chariot drawn by seahorses as they gallop over the water. They are guided in their course by fine figures of Tritons, which emerge from the water, sculptured by Bracci in 1762. Between the Palatine, the Capitoline, and the Esquiline Hills is situated the Roman Forum. Here remains the Temple of Saturn, one of the oldest temples of Rome, erected in 497 BC. In the foreground, the ruins of the Basilica Julia. Work on the building was begun in 54 BC by Julius Caesar, from whom it took its name. It was dedicated in 46 BC. In Piazza della Rotonda stands the Pantheon, one of the most famous monuments of Roman art. If the Colosseum requires some effort of the imagination to recreate its former splendor, the impact of the Pantheon is immediate and awesome. The Italians' passion for natural goodness is reflected in Piazza Navona. The joy of good living is the essence of Italy. Shop at a leisurely pace in the many elegant shops or in the colorful outdoor markets for handicrafts from the local artisans. Castel Sant'Angelo, the original grandiose mausoleum, commissioned by the Emperor Hadrian for himself and his successors, became a fortress less than a century later, when Aurelian transformed it into a fortified bridgehead. One of the most characteristic squares in the city, the Piazza di Spagna, the gathering point for foreigners, artists, and people from all walks of life. The best known, most fashionable streets of Rome starts from here. At the foot of the steps, one can rest by the Barcaccia fountain, built by Pietro Bernini in 1627. Overlooking the Tiber River, we can admire the great dome of St. Peter's Basilica. From the time Julius II began construction of a new church in 1506, it would take well over 100 years to complete, with various supervisors which succeeded each other until the middle of the century. From Giocondo to Raphael, and finally Michelangelo, who envisioned the great dome which crowned the renovated basilica. The largest and most beautiful public park in Rome is the Villa Borghese. With a perimeter of 6 kilometers, it is also the loveliest, with a wealth of trees and charming paths. In the early 15th century, the Renaissance would finally be born in Florence. The huge church dedicated to Santa Maria del Fiore was built over the ruins of an older church. The Duomo, begun in 1296. Even its name, Fiore, refers to the city. In 1334, Giotto was nominated foreman of the works, but he dedicated most of his time to the bell tower. It was built much faster than the church. In 1418, there was a competition for the best project among all architects, and Brunelleschi's project was chosen. The dome was marvelously brought to an end in 1434. The baptistery is a jewel box of a building, finely patterned in colored marble inlays, and with the octagonal shape of a Byzantine royal chapel. Dates from the 11th century. only walking can the tourist have a taste of this wonderful city as one strolls by local merchant shops. A masterpiece of Florentine Gothic, Santa Maria Novella. According to tradition, this Dominican church was designed by two members of the order and begun in 1246. The Dominicans sometimes preach to their followers in the spacious piazza fronting the church, a good place to view the marble. Dominating the Piazza della Signoria is the powerful town hall begun in 1298. The unusual shape of the palazzo was determined by the Roman theater over which it was built, a result from the difficult times in which the urban and mercantile republic evolved. Piazza della Signoria was once the center of political and social life of the Florentine Republic. It has staged the major event from medieval times to the present days. On the left side of the piazza is the wonderful fountain by Amanati, representing Neptune. Joining the two Florences are a series of bridges. The most famous is the Ponte Vecchio, or Old Bridge. This bridge has spanned the narrowest part of the Arno River since Roman times. Now limited to pedestrian use, the bridge retains the goldsmith shops that have operated here since 1492. The magnificent and historical bridge dates from 1345. A Benedictine abbey, the Badia, with an attractive campanile, and an interior graced by Filippino Lippi. Not too far along, we come to this austere fortress, the Bargello, begun in 1255. Today, it houses the National Museum. South of the Duomo, here is the Alighieri House, the birthplace of the father of the Italian language, Dante. The huge rectangular piazza, surrounded with antique buildings, is the center of one of Florence's oldest, if not richest, neighborhoods. Fronting this piazza is the Church of Santa Croce, founded in 1294. The neo-Gothic marble facade dates from 1863. Several copies of Michelangelo's work, among which is the David, decorates a national monument. As we take leave of Florence through the southern hills, we are greeted by the breathtaking view of the Certosa del Galuzzo, built in 1341. The city of Pisa. For centuries it was a port, first for the Romans, then for itself. By the 16th century, Pisa was a university town, home to Galileo. In Piazza dei Miracoli, place of wonders, it remains unbelievable, no matter how many times seen. The Leaning Tower. Hardly had the tower been started in 1173 when it started sinking. More than 700,000 people climbed the more than 200 steps each year for the view, or simply for the odd sensation of walking down the outside ramps. It is here that the famous Galileo carried out experiments regarding the effects of gravity. Although begun in 1152, the baptistery circular building results from 14th century additions. The Crusades influenced the interior, which is based on the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. When Venice comes to mind, it is hard to concentrate on fertile valleys and volcanic hills. The uniqueness of a canal city without cars are enough to warrant a trip. Canal travel can not only save time and energy, it can be both necessary and picturesque. There is only one Venice, and its uniqueness is not just a matter of canals. It is due to the way it receives the sun. As you try to focus on the components that make up the fabulous scene here, you'll notice the campanile, originally a lighthouse, then the bell tower calling nobles to the palace, and guild workers to their jobs. By the quay are two huge monolithic columns, one with a lion of St. Mark and the other with a statue of St. Theodore, both brought to Venice from the Orient in 1125. The Piazzetta was also the scene of public executions, and between these columns, both humble citizens and high-ranking personages received the death sentence. St. Mark's Basilica was destroyed in a fire in 927 and rebuilt as we see it today between 1043 and 1071. Over the centuries, its walls were covered with a glowing mantle of mosaics and precious marbles. Above the clock tower is a famous bell, sounded by the hammers of two male figures. They have been striking the hours in Venice for over 4 centuries. Harder to sort out until you're near is the clock on the front of the tower, decorated with signs of the zodiac and leading to the Mercerie, a series of shopping streets that end at the Rialto. The history of Venice is reflected everywhere in this extraordinary set of squares. With the revival of Carnival, artisans once again make the traditional white masks called bauda. You can find harlequin faces and sun gods and moon goddesses all year. The Carrere Museum was founded in 1830 by a wealthy Venetian, Teodoro Carrere, who bequeathed his fabulous art collection to his native city. The Mercerie, these are the main shopping streets of Venice. There are more than enough shops selling antiques and finely crafted goods around San Marco. The image of Venice as an escapist paradise is interwoven with romantic singing gondoliers and is further enhanced by the memory of the famous people who in the past have lived in this or that palace, now slowly crumbling into the canals. Writers and artists are also prominent among visitors to the city. They come to study its political institutions, art, and history. We have reached one of the most famous, if not the most famous bridge in the world, the Rialto Bridge. Until the last century, the Rialto was the only bridge across the canal. The present bridge was built between 1588 and 1591. Atop the bridge, one can experience the panoramic view of ancient architecture on the canal. The busy flow of water traffic with gondoliers and motorboats helped the tourists make their visit in Venice the most memorable trip of a lifetime. Take any canal or any corner of the city, and all is completely different from anything we are used to in our steel and cement cities. In Venice, you can eat special dishes unavailable elsewhere in Italy. Excellent Adriatic fish rushed fresh to the market from the fishing boats. Life in Venice is a magical reflection, enchanting glimpses of active waterways, and the most striking aspect is the incredible variety. Every inch of Venice is unique unto itself. As you acclimate yourself to the tranquility of traffic, your trip to Venice will not be complete until you visit its picturesque town of the lagoon, Murano. It was in the 13th century when Murano would start to leave its lasting impression upon the world. This traditional art of working with glass has been passed on through centuries from generation to generation. Works rivaled by no other glassmakers in the world. Our modern works of glass are still made in the ancient traditional ways, which paralleled Murano's 13th century masterpieces. Here in the glass factories, visitors can view the process of blowing glass into true works of art, each different from the other. It is with great care and pride that each artist creates his unique addition to Murano's history. Murano's glassworking industry has evolved in a glass-making center capital of the world. From vases to mirrors to colorful crystal, the fame of Murano glass will never be eclipsed. As the gondolier glides through the canal, we take with us romantic memories of the Queen of the Adriatic. A city who arrived late in history, but took little time to surpass her neighbors. If we reflect on the difficulty to reconstruct the ancient past from the scant evidence we have left, we may begin to understand why the discovery of the ancient city of Pompeii is probably the luckiest and most extraordinary event in the whole history of archaeology. "2,000 years ago, Pompeii was inhabited by nearly 20,000 people. On August 24th, 79 AD, this suddenly came to a stop. The deadly volcano, Vesuvius, in the short span of a few dramatic hours, buried under a layer of red-hot lava the entire city with its inhabitants. All this was preserved by a layer of ash for nearly 2,000 years. It wasn't until 1748 that the town was rediscovered, and now offered for us to see, leaving us moved and wonderfully impressed. Pompeii was founded around the middle of the 6th century BC. This was a peaceful period of gradual growth, which lasted till the 5th century BC, when the city was conquered. New neighborhoods were created. The process of interaction between the old inhabitants and the new colonizers turned out to be relatively speedy and peaceful. Pompeii was part of a complex, civilized, and sophisticated world, but it is from their homes that the Pompeians speak most intimately, from their tranquil family gardens to the home interiors richly painted with mythological scenes. The windowless facades protecting the cherished privacy of their innermost recess. Fixed in the attitudes of those terrible last moments, the inhabitants were asphyxiated by the sulfuric gases from the eruption, and then buried by the ashes. Pompeii, a major crossroad, where the past merges with the present and the future. A city full of life, eternal and immortal. This ancient Greek city was founded in the 6th century. The Greek temples of Paestum have remained largely intact, gleaming in light reflected off the nearby sea. The Temple of Ceres, built in the 16th century, was originally dedicated to Athena. Its monumental majesty is unrivaled. Symbolic tombs, known as hypogeums, were underground chapels. The Lucanians conquered the town in 400 BC. In 273 BC, it then became a Roman colony under the name Paestum. The Sacred Road, it presents a Greek layout and clearly Roman paving. It was 12 kilometers long. To the east, we find the Temple of Poseidon. It was built around 450 BC, being contemporary with the Pantheon for Athens. Though very little remains of the walls enclosing the cell, we can easily notice that the cell of the Temple of Poseidon was divided into 3 waves by 2 lines of columns. The roofs consisted of wooden beams and terracotta tiles. Because of the nature of such materials, they went lost. The basilica is the oldest temple in Paestum. It was built around 550 BC. It is in fact an ancient temple dedicated to Juno, worshipped as the goddess of fertility and motherhood. The Italic Temple was a small temple built in the Roman age, around 200 BC. Paestum, with its Greek and Roman treasures, permits the visitor to a voyage in history, a jewel preserved by nature to a past of 2,500 years. The city of Caserta is inland, rather than part of the bay. It is famous for the Regia, the 18th century Bourbon palace and gardens called the Versailles of Italy. Built for Charles III by Luigi Vanvitelli, the neoclassical palace was built between 1752 through 1754. On the ceiling in the first hall is an important painting by Domenico Mondo, the Bourbonic arms raised in virtue. In the Astian Hall, an imposing table with a ceramic vase of rare beauty was a wedding gift for Francis II. A salon precedes Francis II's huge bedroom, the latter being furnished with Empire-style furnishings. In the Hall of Mars, an enormous bowl made of precious marble stands in the center of the room. Beautiful masterpieces adorn the ceilings and walls of the entire palazzo, many by famous artists throughout Europe. The Bourbon king, Charles III, did not concern himself with the social and economic problems in the kingdom. With taste and pride of a great monarch, he wished to leave tangible traces of his reign and all of his enlightened government. On entering the royal apartments, this was the room where King Ferdinand II died in 1859. The 250 acres of gardens are arranged around a 1-kilometer-long avenue that runs from the rear of the palace, proceeds past pools and fountains of mythological creatures. Mirrored in the limpid waters is the Fountain of Caesarea, composed of dolphins, mermaids, and naiads. We are greeted by the next group of marble statues that represent Venus and Adonis. At the end, the great waterfall where figures of Diana and Actaeon hunt and run over the rocks. Following the large Gulf of Salerno, consisting of wonderful landscapes, we find Vietri on the sea. It is well frequented by tourists. It has beautiful beaches, hotels, playing grounds, and various comforts. Since Etruscan times, Vietri has been an important center for the production of all sorts of ceramics. The craftsmen of Vietri have not been influenced by the industrialization. They go on making their beautiful ceramics with passion and skill. These ceramics are original in their design and shapes, very well known and sought after all over the world. There are tiles, dishes, vases, and various objects, all with their vivid colors, and it could not be otherwise in places where everything is sun and light, where nature is just an explosion of beauty. No matter what they say, the cooking in Vietri will not remind you of your neighborhood pizzeria. It's just too good. The ingredients too high in quality and too fresh to be so ordinary. Even the simplest margarita can be elevated by the flavor of the local tomatoes and freshness of real buffalo mozzarella, cooked in a traditional wood-burning oven. Try your spaghetti al dente, with the freshest clams still in their shells. You'll know that you're dining in Italy. The Hotel Raito, a five-star accommodation situated on the highest point in Vietri. With its serene contemporary furnishings, a terrace restaurant with food, wine, and local drinks at its best. This is the true flavor of Vietri. Here, the tourist finds a world of peace, an intimate and suggestive corner where nature offers incomparable beauties which cannot be forgotten. Only several miles long, less than a few wide, the island of Capri may be small, but its beauty is legendary. Grottos and natural rock formations form its east coast. Mountains and beautiful paths cover most of its interior. From Anacapri, one can reach the summit of Mount Salaro on a fast and comfortable cable car. At 589 meters, it is the highest summit from which you can make out some ruins of ancient fortified structures built by the English. From the scenic lookout post, one can look out over the enchanting view. Capri is essentially a fairy tale, a dream lost in the extraordinary azure of an incredible sea in the boundless panoramas which embrace the eye's view. The Faraglioni, as seen from Mount Salaro. The top of this summit may also be reached on foot and starts off Anacapri. In the ever-changing and vast panorama of the minor islands of Italy, Capri holds a position of absolute privilege. Everything which can be perceived by the senses finds its greatest elevation on this island. From the perfume of the flowers, from the strong salt-laden breezes of the sea, to the rich taste of its noble wines produced on rough but generous land. At the foot of the summit, the tourist can relax at many of the cafe bars which align the streets of Capri. A characteristic element is the topographical order of the town, which is a picturesque labyrinth of streets and alleys, which are often alternated or crossed by narrow lanes, these latter lanes being characterized by flights of steps and by graceful arches which succeed one another. These streets are characterized by the extremely beautiful buildings and by the elegant shops and workshops selling handicrafts, refined and exclusive products. The road ends right in front of the Grand Hotel Quisisana, respectively the most luxurious hotel in Capri. In the last 10 years, Capri's importance as a tourist spot has increased enormously, not only during the tourist season, but also during the winter months, and notably during the Christmas holidays and New Year. The large number of natural curiosities, the charm of the countryside, the architecture of the towns, the Mediterranean flora, and the quality of light are among the features of this little block of limestone, less than 5 miles long, that have attracted flocks of visitors since the early 19th century. Emerging from the turquoise transparency of the marine waters is a magnificent imperial villa of the Augustine age. The Marina Grande. It is difficult for a person who does not know Capri to imagine the emotions and the surprise of the tourist who sets foot on this enchanted island for the first time. Today, Marina Grande is a beautiful riverside town which is set in a lovely natural position at the foot of the green saddle along which the romantic town of Capri stretches. Rocky mountains and high cliffs dominate the characteristic villages washed by the sea. Hidden among the green hills of lemons, this is the coast of Amalfi, also known as the Divine Coast. Positano is one of the pearls of this coast, known for the huge rocky walls on the sea, frightful gorges, and deep caves. Hydrofoil service connects Amalfi to its entire coast. Spectacular and suggestive, delicate and charming in its beautiful details, it is part of the Sorrentine Peninsula, which stretches itself on the Tyrrhene between the gulfs of Naples and Salerno. Today, Amalfi is one of the largest resorts along the coast, with a bustling ferry port near its beach and a grand population of 6,000. Amalfi's medieval period is quickly discovered by anyone with a little time to explore the town and not just its coast and grottos. Here the town of Amalfi dominates the scene. It can be considered the key point of the whole journey along the coast. It was founded in the 4th century AD by Roman citizens on their way to Constantinople. It is a charming holiday resort, one of the best along the Tyrrhenian coast. White little houses reflected in the deep blue waters, luxury hotels clinging to the slope of a gorge sloping down to sea, overlooking the panoramic view of the bay. The Amalfi Drive is narrow, and on its most southern stretch, the drive makes its serpentine way up through the town and hills. Clinging to the cliffs are hotels, villas, and stores. Here, people pause to browse and shop for local products and souvenirs. The medieval village of Amalfi is graced by the churches and palazzi created in the local Byzantine Moorish style. In the quiet square of the cathedral is the Fountain of St. Andrew, built in 1760. Today, Amalfi owes all its beauty of its position as one of the most celebrated resorts in Italy, to its transparent sea, to the mildness of its climate, and not least, to the well-developed and elegant tourist amenities which have led to it gaining an enviable reputation throughout the world. Italy is like a natural museum whose masterpieces are too numerous to ever be completely catalogued. The food and wine is just as diversified as the country's history. Italy's beauty is easy to experience and almost impossible to define.